over to this BA, and then we'll come back to Edwards. So this would be the point where Edwards is recording and is going to cut it off, right? And so I pulled it up here so I could look at it intraday. So this is 3 days of trading. Let me freeze this screen so I don't see stuff. But essentially, they had the low down here. This was from the first day. That didn't work very well, did it? Let's try that again. Shift and go across. There we go. And so they had this low on Monday, I think it was, right? Today's Wednesday. And so this was Monday from here to here. This was Tuesday's trade up until, I think, right there. And then Wednesday's trade here. And then today, the announcement was made that they were going to ground them here. And basically, they had done ground. So here wasn't that big a deal. It shot down, tested that low on Monday, had less volume. You know, it was a great trade there if you made the trade. I actually had an order at 361 plus and then one at 365. So the 60 or whatever this low was, I forget what this low is. This low is 64 something, 65.86. So I had one just above that, and then I had one lower thinking. And now the one lower was based on the week, not the weeklies, but the trades over here, not trades, but the EA over here was based on the weekly when it was coming back into these swing point lows and the swing point high. This swing point high is going to have a lot more volume, but then there's two more below it, you know, these two down here. And so I was looking at those and trades into those as a place, and I just picked 60, I think it was 61 something, which was just inside those, right, about a third of the way down, and unfortunately missed it. But to me, this is a bounce trade. These are good bounce trades. You got the setup. It did what it was supposed to. The volume came in right. You know, quite honestly, I didn't wait on the volume because I thought it would be a decent trade, even if it had more volume and you still get a bounce out of it. So then the target becomes, you know, up here somewhere, back into this gap at least, and maybe back into the big gap. And so I would, if I had more, I would be looking to sell this immediately. But I don't have more, so I'll see what it looks like when it gets there, and either decide to sell or pick it up, you know, sell it up here somewhere. Mm-hmm. So those are nice trades.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing is that, I mean, it could really be a dog and keep going down, but it's going to get a bounce, and maybe today it started, and there's so much of a gap down there, you got some place to trade to.
Well, you have wide, you know, if you're doing something like this, you're trading the news and you're trading a very wide price spread, right? So I mean, This thing was big. I mean, it's down, I think, about 11% already in 3 days.
Yeah.
So you know, it's enough of a drop to make it worthwhile to, you know, play a 5 or 6% bounce at least, and potentially more. So that's that one. Let's look at the other two here. So let me grab BSX and PLD.
I've been watching PLD, Edward, for a while, and I know what you're saying. It looks like it's getting close to. It's got it broke out on the weekly 6 weeks ago, and it's popped up big this week. But you get a retrace down there on that high volume bar, it's going to be big on the weekly.
Yeah. So this one, and again, I haven't really looked at this before, so just looking at it now, you know, my opinion. You just broke out again, right? Today it looks like that top was, and we've got the quotes today, but we don't have the derivative hasn't ran yet, but it looks like it's a breakout. 7192 closes at 723, so it's over it.
Higher volume too.
You didn't get 6896. Oh, it did touch it.
Oh, where it did?
No, missed it by a penny.
Yeah.
6895, 6896. So just missed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is the kind of stock, if the general market keeps going up, it can keep trying to climb. I don't typically buy breakouts unless there's something else to it than this, and I probably wouldn't buy this, at least here. Mm-hmm. I think I would be waiting on some sort of a retrace too.
But if you look at the anchor bar on that weekly on the left, that with the high volume bar on the weekly, there's support right there too for that.
Yeah, 68.20, which is a third of the way back into this. It
Yep.
would be 6 bars. So
Yep.
yeah, that's
You could.
that's a
Yeah,
that is kind of the sweet spot, right? If it comes into this area, right in here
that's where I
somewhere.
would be looking to buy it.
Yeah,
Pretty good chunk from here, though.
yeah. And you got all this back here. These, of course, got broken. So these are kind of dead at this point. So
But that anchor bar is still alive with the high volume, isn't it? Well, no, it broke, didn't it? It
this
broke.
one,
Yeah, it broke.
no, this one hasn't been broken yet.
Oh, that's right. It didn't. Okay,
It has
it
not
failed
broken.
over there on the right.
Yeah, it tried, it test failed, and then shot down, right?
Yeah.
So this is the test failure that fails and then leads to the retrace, right?
Yeah.
Leads
Well,
to the retrace, and eventually, of course, there was a lot more going on than just this guy, but, anyway.
The ABCD's
Yeah,
85.
So this PLD fell out of bed because of the market. If the market hadn't glitched, it probably would have kept on going sideways until it decided to break out.
Yeah, this in the classical stuff, this is one of those megaphone things, right? We're just doing this. I don't know if you guys have ever read about those, but they call them megaphone. It's where you put the trend lines expanding, right? And so you essentially are going bigger and bigger all the way. Until it usually drops.
Until it doesn't.
Yeah. But I think the whole market has to drop for something like this to drop, and it would take it a while anyway. It's a weekly.
Yeah.
So.
It's pretty strong on the monthly as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's broken out of everything, right? Everything's broken out on this guy. I mean, if you're looking for stocks to buy, you want stocks like these, right? That's why Matt's focused on XLRE and some of these others, right? Because they're the ones that are broken out and they're showing the most strength. And you want to find those stocks that are showing the most strength that when they do pull back, as long as the market doesn't, crap out, then you probably should have a decent chance of at least getting out for nothing if you're wrong, or getting out for a decent gain if it takes off again. The one thing you brought up, Matt, I would also inject, and I know we've talked about this before, this ABCD, I don't believe.
It's ridiculous. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that. Yeah, it's not right.
Yeah, and since we're recording this for a broader audience, I just want to point that out. You just don't believe those.
So we'd be looking for a doubling of the range or something here.
Yeah, and because it's a megaphone,
it's
kind of a range.
Big glitch down, which was
it was kind of a range here. Yeah, it was kind of a range here, right? Maybe a little bit taller, maybe right up in there, and then you had this big kind of outside the thing, but that was the range, and now it's bubbled. So if you double that guy, maybe you're doubling up to there somewhere. And so if you're able to catch it down here, right, that's a pretty good trade. It's not bad. Yeah, it's a good strong stock though. And the chip stocks have found their way back. I mean, this is a chip, right, Prologis. So let's see what the other one looks like. BSX. This is Boston Scientific. Yeah. So this one's got a tight range at the top, and yeah, so this one is got this little tight range on the weekly. I mean, on the daily. That's kind of been building out here, about like that. And let's see. So it came back, tested into this within 6 bars, no volume, 32 to 25. Didn't get to that one. And it's new highs on the monthly. So this is basically set up kind of the same way, just not quite as strong as the other one. Yeah, I would, on something like this, I would be looking for, and this gets back into, you know how I always look at the big picture too, right? This gets back into the big picture. What's the big picture going to do on the general market? And the general market will do that next. The general market's set up to try and come back now. And if it does, then you'll get a trade back into this swing point high, and that would be within 6.2, and this one's wide. So you could actually trade back to here, 37, and still be a good stock, right? There'd be nothing wrong with it. So you could pop down there, pop back up, stay within this swing point low, swing point high is low. You know, and it'd be a good test, full retest regen, which is still also neo correct, and you know, deeper into this and back up. So, you know, this is the sort of thing where I would watch the general market to see if I can get a nice entry on it. If the general market pulls back, let's do the general market next. So let me switch over to it, and right here. And so today we got a test failure, right? We go up, we test the highs, we have less volume. So we basically, I don't know why my shift key isn't working. Let's try it again. So we go up, we test, and we close underneath. And the volume's just a little bit less, not that much, but a little bit. So that's kind of a test failure on the daily. On the weekly, it's kind of doing what I think I said, you know, that might happen, is that this thing was going to be strong short term, and then we'd see if it turned, and this would trade sideways. And so the next 2 days, we'll see if that actually turns now and tries to come back some. I still think I still think you can get a bigger move down if this fails here, which would also support the whole thesis that I laid out, and also support the idea that this big, you know, vertical move is going to retrace more and set up a bigger range. So we'll just have to see if all that takes place or not. But all that's set up. Now, the fly in the ointment is over here. If you look at the IXIC, which is the broad market, this one barely failed. And I mean, just barely, like a penny or two, right? At 97, this 89, so it fails. The close here was 7643.40. That high was 7643. 26 cents, you know, 3,000 stocks or whatever the hell's in this thing, which is kind of cool. And so it's doing the same things. Now, look at the NDX, though. NDX gets over everything. Now, the NDX didn't have a swing point high, though. It never set one up because it was too strong. And so even though that is not a quote-unquote, you know, breakout, it's still, you know, yeah, it's showing strength. And so if you're going to get the pullback, it's going to start right here. It's going to be this guy. So tomorrow I'll be, you know, watching this one very closely to see if it does some sort of a retrace, if the SOX, if the, you know, the biotechs, if the big cap technology, if all those guys want to try and push back down, or at least enough of them push back down. This is the one that has to fail, because this is the one that is actually the strongest right now. So this is where the action will be.
Well, since the Russell led us up, if you look at that.
If you go to the Russell, actually, that's a good point, Matt. If you go to the Russell's actually weaker and try to get into the quote-unquote breakdown bar, right? It's not much of one, but it's there. And it finishes at the lows today. So, you know, this guy's certainly much weaker. You can see it over here. Came down more on the week that it came down as well. The other thing that, you know, I think I pointed this out when I talked to you guys or on the weekly or somewhere. We got that options expiry, which is the quad, right? The quad this week. So Friday is going to have huge volume. It always does on the quads. And so you're going to get big volume on the weekly. And so how we close this week is going to really influence the chart, because you're going to have a big volume week. Now, all of these have tested higher on the weeklies. So, you know, that's a quote unquote positive. So the only thing that would make them a negative in my mind is if we go back here and I blow this up, is if this weekly actually closes and looks something like, you know, red. Let me get the colors right here. There. If this thing closes something like this, right, with the bar inside, right, that looks like that, I think that would be a negative bar. So we'll have to see if it ends up that way, because the volume is going to expand, or even if it gets worse, right, closes down here somewhere, of course. So
I'm flipping through all the sectors. And I think I said this in the Skype room, is that it seems like there's a lot of red bars and green bars with a little white space in between them, like this right here, on a lot of the sectors. And I don't know what the significance of that is. I'm just pointing out the observation. I just remember Patrick trying to trade with his options. He liked them close like that, support and resistance. but they're the daily on the SPX doesn't do that, but just about every one of them have these
And
like that right there.
You're talking about this?
Yes.
So the support and resistance zones?
They're tight. They're all really tight. I don't know what that means. I haven't processed it yet, but
well, what it typically means, I mean, I don't really use these as much to decide whether I buy or sell in that zone, because we're always using other things as well. I mean, so we're typically not using these to know whether to buy or sell, right? But where they really are beneficial is where, if we took a different chart, and let's just say these weren't here. If this was here, for example, and I didn't have any green up here,
yeah,
then that just tells me I have a long way to fall before I find the real support, the real demand line. Here we've got a demand line way up here, and we've got a resistance line right there, right? So all it tells me is that you should expect that this thing's going to try to trade somewhere in this range for, this is on a weekly, for the next couple of weeks or so, right? It shouldn't trade too much outside of this range, because you've got a lot of levels of support underneath and you got a lot of levels of resistance up above. So I would expect it to flatten out, which also would make sense as well.
Well, if you look at the the trend is suspect sideways for the S&P, and it's only 39% ETF, so MTTF. So it still has a ways to go sideways on the daily.
Yeah, it could.
And the monthly's 50% extended, or 50% sideways.
Yeah.
So I mean that's what I'm noticing.
Yeah. We are, if you go to the other side of it and you want to be on the bullish side, right? We're very close to the key level, right?
Yeah.
This thing is right at it. I mean, it's 34? Not that far away. Yeah, it's 36.
36. Yeah.
28.36. So it's 35.95 or something. So I mean, if this thing does take off, well, you just got to tip your hat and say, well, what a market, right? Or maybe we should say, what a central bankers.
Yeah.
Because that really is what's going on in most cases, for all this excitement. But they got to do it, and it gets harder and harder. I mean, that's the genesis of the neo thought, right? Which is, as you come up into these levels, it seriously gets harder and harder to keep going, and that gets reflected in the charts. If you make this kind of a move, it just gets very difficult to keep going. So
one of the stronger sectors is XLK right now, and I'm watching Cisco. If you want to pull Cisco up, since we don't have any other stocks to pull up, that's sure. What I'm kind of watching to.
And they have earnings Friday?
That's right.
Yeah, because I remember you saying this one and Adobe, I think, CSCO.
Actually, it's tomorrow. Let me look here.
Oh, it's tomorrow? Okay.
Hang on just a second. Let me get.
Yeah, no, they've had good earnings for a while, but man, have they had a run, huh?
No. Cisco's not reporting tomorrow. They're not reporting till later. Tomorrow it's Oracle, Adobe, and Broadcom.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
No Cisco.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's that. Yeah, it's too close. I mean, but.
Yeah, that's quite a run.
Yeah, it's quite a run, and I mean, you got a couple of, swing point highs there on the weekly that you can test, and anyway, I'm just kind of watching it, see what it comes back and what it looks like. Yeah,
this is not a bad one to watch either. This is along the lines of the ones that Edward gave us earlier.
Yeah.
Just even stronger, right?
And
than ESX.
And it goes into that XLK. Like I've been looking at the
sector.
The weightings. Yeah, the sector weightings where they're cap weighted, and XLK is right behind XLU. XLU is actually the strongest sector. I know, of all things, but it's such a small part, 2.9% of the S&P, so it's not going to move the S&P.
No, it doesn't.
So but it's still a sector where if the S&P suffers, we might, like Edward pointed that out in the Scott deal, is that's a good place maybe to be if we do get a decent pullback.
Yeah.
But this sector's it's rocking, man.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay. Well, at this point, we'll cut this off and we'll go back